Hello, everyone, and welcome to the DIS webinar, The Ultimate Digital Toolset for High-Performing Service Departments. We are looking forward to hosting this session today. I'm pleased to introduce today's speaker, Aliese North, Senior Product Owner at DIS.
All right, well, thanks for that introduction, Laura, and welcome to everyone to today's webinar. I really appreciate you all joining me. So as we all know, the service department plays a really large part in generating revenue and driving customer satisfaction in your dealership. I know that I and everybody at DIS has an interest in helping you to enhance your performance of your service department, including generating revenue and gaining efficiencies along the way. So with that being said, today I do want to take you through a set of digital tools that we offer, and that's called Service 360. But before we dive into that, I also wanted to make sure that you knew about a previous webinar that we had back in March held by Jim Henderson. Now, Jim is a Mac advisor and consultant for Curie Management Consultants. He's got a wealth of industry knowledge and experience. But in his webinar, he discusses the importance of a successful digital transformation in a service department and how using digital tools for planning and monitoring can make job management easier and more efficient. The use of digital tools, it's really become an industry standard and best practice, and dealerships who have gone through that digital transformation are really seeing the benefits of that. So if you haven't had a chance to view the webinar, I highly recommend it. We do have a link to it on our website. You should have already received the invitation, so you may access it through that or through our website. And then if you also want to request a link in the post survey, we're happy to send a link to that as well. So with that, let's go ahead and take a look at Service 360. So I'm going to share, I'm already sharing my PowerPoint here. We're going to start there, and then we're going to go into a live demo. So when we're talking about Service 360, first of all, we want to define it. So what is it? Well, when you think about 360, you're really thinking of something that's all-encompassing or end-to-end. It's full circle. So really, that's what we've done with Service 360. It's an end-to-end suite of digital productivity tools. And the purpose behind it is it's meant to help enhance the performance of your service department. Now, if you look at the bottom here, we've got 4 different products that are all included in Service 360. And so some of the features that you're going to see as we go through the demo, using our scheduling and queue planning options, that's going to allow you to plan and track work orders in a quick and efficient manner. You're also going to be able to see real-time updates on your technician's activity. By having your technicians use our service logistics app, that's going to allow them to improve their productivity because right in the palm of their hand, they're going to have their mobile device, which will allow them to, view work order information right there, all the customer and equipment information that they need. It's integrated with time clock, so they'll be able to punch right into the work order. They're going to be able to take pictures, add their notes, and all of that transfers back into the business system. And then our planned maintenance module, that's going to allow you to really drive repeated business to your service department because you can set up maintenance agreements, or you might call them contracts, and automate that work order creation for your planned maintenance agreements. So let's take a look at the workflow that's behind Service 360. So we've got a couple different modules at play. So of course, we've got the business system. So in this case, we have Quantum, and this is where you're starting the process. So you're going to create your work order. That's going to come out to Service 360, and you're going to see in a minute, we use a program. You may have heard the term before, Altura. Really, we view that as an extension of the business system, and Service 360 is housed there. And that is where, as a back office staff member, you're going to be able to schedule and queue or queue a work order to your technician. It's going to add that assignment. Then you're going to come over, your technician would come over to the mobile app, so that's Service Logistics. They're going to view that assignment. They can clock in, like we talked about. They'll be able to view all the information that they need. They're going to, as they do the repair or as they finish the repair, they'll be able to add their story, notes, pictures. Then they're going to mark that as completed. They can actually share some of that information with your customer if they're available to review the work that was completed. The back office is going to get a notice that that work order was completed. And back in our Altura application for the back office, that's where they're going to see all of the detail from the technician. So you're going to see the notes, the labor, the pictures, and all of that automatically transfers. Work order notes and labor, those get transferred automatically right onto the work order. So you don't have to worry about typing anything in. All you're concerned about at that point is verifying everything. So maybe you want to adjust some of the labor, add a few notes, make final adjustments, and then you can get that out, billed and invoiced as you do today. All right, so now let's go through a demo. We're going to start out in the business system. So I'm going to get out of my PowerPoint here. So I have Quantum open and I've created this work order. So I've already added my unit information, and I would put this on hold, and it's going to send it over to Service 360 for me to be able to assign this to my technician. So now I'm going to go over into Service 360. So as I mentioned, this is part of our Altura application. It's an extension of the business system. We're going to come back to Quantum at the end, though, for our full circle demonstration. But let's head out to Service 360. So as I mentioned, we have a couple of different planning tools. So our very first one is service scheduling. Now, for those of you who have been with us for a while, you might be familiar with Quantum service scheduling that was in the business system. This is Altura service scheduling, which is actually a replacement to Quantum service scheduling. And it has a lot of the same concepts, but it really allowed us to utilize better technology and enhanced performance. And so if you're familiar with Quantum scheduling, you're going to kind of get the concepts here. But what this offers is if you in your dealership operate off of a calendar-based scheduler, then this is going to be the mode for you. So you're going to see today's date, so we default to today, and all of my technicians that are set up for the scheduler are listed here. If I have multiple branches, I actually would be able to see all of my branches within this view. I can filter that to a singular branch. So maybe I'm, a service manager for just one branch. I'd be able to view that information. Or if I'm more of a regional or general manager, maybe I want to be able to view all of my stores at once. I could do that. And then I have a couple things already planned on the schedule, and then I'm going to show you how you assign additional work. So right here, if we look at this Jason Gray row here, this technician, he's got work planned from 8 to 5. And these items with the white background here, these are our work orders. So we can see there, it's got the work order number, it's got the customer name. If the equipment is attached in that unit info tab from the business system, I'm going to see that information there. This item that you're seeing here is what we call a non-work event. So that's going to allow you to track things that don't require a work order. So we're talking about things like lunch. Down here, I have a training example. You could track doctor's appointments, vacation, anything that you need to add to the schedule so that you know that those technicians aren't available at that time. You can use by means of a non-work event. The third item that you see here is what we call a planned work order. Now, these are items that are intended to eventually become a work order. So you can think of them like placeholder appointments, if you will. So what I would do with this particular one is at any time, I can set up this appointment, and then I can convert this to a work order when I'm ready. And it'll actually go out, it will retrieve a work order, the next work order number in line in Quantum, and it is going to convert this to a work order. And now it'll, now that it's assigned to a technician, he'd be able to see that on his device. So this is going to be good if you want to just kind of start planning out in the future. Maybe you don't know exactly when something is going to take place, when a customer is going to drop it off, but you want to have an idea that that's coming. You could use those planned work events as a way to indicate that on your schedule. Each branch also has this unassigned events section. So if you aren't ready to assign events to a technician yet, but you want to get all of the events that you're going to plan for the day on the calendar and then schedule to individual technicians, that's what you would do with this unassigned events row. You can add as many events up here as you want to and start stacking them up. And some of our dealerships that have been using the scheduler for a while are already using that in that manner. So now that we have a couple events on the schedule, let's talk about how we get additional events or additional work orders planned for our technicians. So you'll notice in the lower right corner here, we have our jobs list, this show jobs button. And when I click on this is actually going to open a list of all of the open work orders in the system. So opens in a panel mode here. I can use this drag handle to make it larger. I also could expand this out. And before we get to scheduling additional work for the technician, let's just talk about what we're seeing here. So we have a lot of different columns of information in this jobs list. And the reason that we do that is there could be a lot of elements that you need to know about your work order before you get it scheduled. So what we've added here, if I scroll across, you're going to start seeing just how much information we have here that may be useful to you as you're planning. Now, obviously, this is really too much data for a person to consume at one time. So what we've actually done is we've created a column manager. So if we click here on the columns button, this is going to allow you to set up the columns that you care about. So based on how you run your dealership and what information you want to see, you would be able to not only choose which columns that you want to see, but you also can control the order in which they're displayed from left to right. Additionally, you can also set up different column views. So perhaps you want to switch it up a little bit, have different columns near the front on a certain time frame, and then later on you switch to another one. So you'll notice here I have my favorite columns. This little ribbon indicates that's my default column set. But if I want to move over to a different column set, I can just click on it. So I'm going to click on this Aliese's columns here. And just like that, it applied a different column view. And at any time, I can go back to my default. I also can make changes. So maybe I want to make changes to my default because I've decided that maybe some of these things don't really apply to me anymore, or maybe I care about seeing my technician status from the Service Logistics app. Notice I'm using this drag handle to reorder my columns. I can come here and make an update. And then now when I make those changes, I can see that technician status. So there's a lot of flexibility and customization that you have. This is actually going to be on an individual user basis. So if you've got people even within the same store that like to view information a little bit differently, they'll have that flexibility to do that. Now, additionally, we also have some options in our filter set. So this data is going to default to seeing the most recently opened work order. But if I want to change that around, I can sort it differently. So I do have some sort options. Maybe I want to do it by work order number. We'll talk about priority here in just a second. But maybe in addition to sorting my information differently, I want to filter out certain information because I'm looking for something specific. So we've given a lot of different filter options here. And so perhaps I want to look at everything that's not already scheduled. So we're going to say is scheduled no. And maybe that's all I want. I just want a filter that quickly shows me everything that's not scheduled. So I'm going to go ahead and apply that. And now I can see in my scheduled column, nothing's checked. I'm just seeing the things that haven't been scheduled yet. And maybe I think that that's a pretty common filter that I'm going to want to apply. Well, I can come up here to my filters, and with those elements set, I can click on this Save Filter. I'm going to give it a name, so we'll just call it Not Scheduled. Oops. And I can say whether that's just for me, maybe that's just something only I care about, or maybe I want to share that out with others, and I can make it public, or I can even go as far as making it public and editable for everyone. And I also could set this as my default. So maybe this is the filter set that I care about the most. I want it to automatically apply every time I access the jobs list. Then I can go ahead and check that default filter box. Now I'm going to save it. Notice it shows up under this saved filter section under the mine. It's got my ribbon, and every time I access the jobs list, that's what's going to default automatically. Now, just like our columns, I can apply other saved filters that I have. So I could click on this not started jobs, and it's going to automatically apply that filter set. I can open it back up if I want to double check what the criteria was behind that filter. I can do so. I can make changes to it and update that filter. So I have a lot of flexibility here with filters as well. Now, some of the elements that really make this tool useful are our ability to prioritize, give a priority code to our jobs, and also to tag jobs as well. So I'm going to go back to my columns that I have set up, and I want to focus on these two columns right here. So for each job, or each separate work order that you have, you are able to set a priority code from 1 to 9. So those are hard-coded options. And those priority codes are going to be completely dealership defined. So you would decide what those mean to you. Now, obviously, in most cases, a priority 1 is going to be your equipment downs. It's the emergency type jobs. But as you go up from there, you can decide what that means to you. And then once you've applied those priorities, you can use our filter to say, okay, first I want to look at all of my priority 1 jobs. I want to get those scheduled because those are my most important. Then you can move on from there. Now, second kind of linked or similar option that we have here is our tagging. And that's going to allow you to classify your jobs with different important notes. So you notice I have a few options here. This is a mechanical failure here. Maybe I have made a very specific appointment with a customer and I don't want that to move. I could indicate that through a tag. And I can add multiple. So maybe I have a back-ordered part and it's a mechanical failure. I could apply both of those to the same work order, and I'd be able to view both of those in this column here. And just like the priorities, I would be able to filter on those. So if I'm looking for anything that, oops, our tags are up here, priority and tags. If I'm looking for anything that has a specific tag, I can go ahead and filter on that. We do not limit you with the amount of tags that you can create. And again, those are completely dealership defined. So if we collapse this jobs list, I'm just going to take you to where those get set up. So you can see I've got a number of tags that are already created. And some of these I've borrowed from a few dealers who are using our scheduler. You can give it any color that you want. We have the whole rainbow here for you to choose from, so you're able to make clear delineations between the various tags that you set up. So those are two pretty common uses for how to schedule or what you might filter on in order to properly manage. So now that we've talked about some of the elements, let's dive into how we actually schedule. So let's say that I have filtered my list. Now maybe I'm going to go look at everything that has a priority 1. So we'll just look at that. Going to go ahead and apply that filter. So now all of my priority 1 jobs are listed here. Now I'm going to move I like my paneled mode here because I can see my schedule and my jobs lists at the same time. So this is really how you'd want to have it set up when you're ready to schedule. But once I pick my work order that I want to assign, so let's just pick this one, looks good right here. Let's say this is the one. Then I use this drag handle. So notice my mouse changed slightly to a little hand icon. I'm going to click on it. I'm going to hold my mouse down and I'm going to drag it over. Now, sorry, my screen moved a little bit. Oops, sorry about that. Let's do that again. So notice that I have this cancel area. So if this wasn't the correct work order that I wanted to grab, I would be able to drop this back and it's going to open my jobs list back again. But let's say I do want to schedule it. What I'm going to do here, I'm still holding my mouse down because as soon as I let go, it's going to schedule it to that technician. But let's say that I want to fill up James' schedule here. So he's got that, he has that unit drop off. So let's say I want to schedule this for him at 10. So I'm going to go ahead and let go. So I picked the technician in the time frame. I'm going to let go. It defaults to scheduling that work order for an hour. But let's say that I think it's more of a 2-hour job. So notice as I hover over the edge here, I get this drag handle. So I'm going to click and I can drag this out. I get my start and stop times in that tooltip above the event. And then I can go ahead and let that go. Now maybe I realized actually that wasn't meant for James, that was meant for Augie down here. So I can click on this and I can drag it down and it's going to move that over. I also can right click and I'd be able to remove or edit this job. So editing that job might include updating the priority code. Maybe I want to update tags, or maybe I just want to view additional information. I'd be able to do that. I also can do that same thing from my jobs list. So if we drag this back over, when I right click on a job here, I get this edit option. And I can do the same thing from the schedule. So if I have this closed and I'm only on the schedule, it's going to open up this edit work order screen here. So notice this is where my priority is listed. So I can choose 1 through 9. I'm able to view my full unit information up here. I can see the document type that I selected. We call it service type here in Service 360. And I can see just some basic elements about this. The customer complaint service instructions, those are linked to the service logistics app. So those would be notes that would be added for the technician to be able to review. I can go here to my schedule tab, and this is going to show me all of the times that this particular job has been scheduled or queued. Now we're going to get into queue in just a minute. That's our second option for planning. But if I want to remove it, maybe I have something in the past and this job carried over, I would use this trash can icon to delete it, and that's going to remove that scheduled event for that technician. My next tab that I have here is tags. So this is those tags that we just talked about. This is where I would select them. And they are alphabetical. I also can type into this field. And I could select multiple if I wanted to, and notice it just kind of loads those up. I can use this X icon if I want to remove it. And then the last thing I have is notes. So this is going to show me any of either the private notes that I add from the business system. So if you're familiar in Quantum, there's a private notes section. It used to be called service notes, and it's been changed. That label is now private notes. And it also has private notes that come from the technician in the app. And you're able to see who added it and at what time. We have a coming feature where you'll be able to add a private note here, and then that would be seen in the business system and also in the app for the technician. So those are some things that you can do to edit. Now, one other thing, if this had been that planned work order, so this is the one here where it's not yet a work order, but it's going to be converted. It's going to open up a very similar dialog, but you'll notice that the main difference here is that I've got these options. It's currently a planned work order. I can check this box to select it as a work order. Now I do need to give the system which document type I'm going to use. So this is going to show me my branch and my document code. So that's that classification code when you're opening a work order and point of sale that you're selecting. So let's say I want to choose work order here, and then I'd have that option to convert. All right, so that's a basic overview of our scheduler. I guess one other thing I want to make sure that you know is available is while it defaults to today's date, I have the ability to schedule either as far in the future as I want to, or I can go back in time and see what was scheduled previously. So based on this, I could go back using this handle. I could go to yesterday and view any work orders that were assigned at that point. I also can click on this date label, and now I have this date picker where I can choose any time frame I'm interested in. The system has some helper options, so if I want to view a week at a time, I would be able to do that. If I wanted to go out, maybe I'm planning out for May, I could do that, select my start and end dates, and then I'd be able to see that date on the calendar. Let's go back to today. One final thing I'm going to show you here before we go into the queue is we do have what we call our technician calendar mode. And so notice each of the technicians have this calendar icon. If I click on it, or click anywhere actually in this row, it's going to open up our technician calendar, and it's a slightly different view. So we're just looking at Jason's calendar here, and now we're looking at it in a vertical mode. I still can open my jobs list and schedule, but what makes this view especially nice is that I can actually move it from a day over to a week. And now I'm looking at everything that he has going on for the week. I also can move it out to a month. Now, of course, the larger time frame you give it, the less detail you can see, but at any time I can hover over an event and I'm able to see a little bit more detail, when it's scheduled, the full equipment information here. And then I can use this drop down here. I can cycle through my technician. So if I want to see for Derek here what he has going on for the month, I can do that. And so forth with the rest of the technicians. I've got some date options. If I want to go forward or backward, I'm able to do that. So that's our schedule mode. We're going to go out to our queue. So our queue is our second mode of planning. So notice I'm on my schedule tab. Now I'm going to go over to my queue. Now the queue is more of a recent feature for us within Service 360. And what it's designed for is dealerships who don't so much know a certain date and time that they want to schedule, but actually they just want to do it based off of a prioritized list. So for each of your technicians who identify more with that way of planning, we have our queue. Now for each queue technician, they're going to have their own separate queue. So if we go over, we're able to see all of our technicians that are listed as a queue technician, and all of these are separate work orders that are in their list. Now you'll notice that that green flashing item at the top, that's what they're currently clocked into. Now one thing I just realized, I'm going to backtrack 1 second before we go over to the queue. I realized I did not show you, but you're also able to view technician clocking in the schedule. And that's an important thing so that you can show what you planned versus what actually happened. So we're going to go ahead and apply that clocking. So the clocking comes as these black bars, and notice that it has this kind of gradient pulse at the end, and that indicates what the technician is currently clocked into. Now you'll notice Revity here on the bottom, she's got this black option on the calendar, and that's a completed clocking. So you'll notice when I hovered over, it's a bit, with only it being about 7 minutes long, you're not going to see a whole lot of detail there, but when you hover over it, you can see the job that she worked on, the start and end time. So as your technicians are clocking throughout the day, so as they punch into the app, the Service Logistics app that I'll show you here in just a second, that will come through what they're currently working on and what they've completed earlier in the day as well. So I wanted to make sure that was shown. In the queue, we are able to see what the technician is currently clocked into. Now in a perfect world, like Brian here, you're hoping that what they're clocked into is the item that's at the top of the queue. And that way you know that they're working on the top job that you planned for them. So in a queue itself, we have some of the same concepts. So the bar that you're seeing here looks very similar to the one on the scheduler. It contains the same information. You're seeing customer, work order, and equipment information. You also can see the priority code that's been assigned. Now, if I want to decide that a different work order within a certain technician's queue is more important than another, I can use these drag handles at the top. So let's say that this job, maybe I just created this work order, but it is kind of an emergency. It needs to be done right away. I can click and hold this drag handle. I'm going to move this up to the top of the queue. And then now it's re-ranked. As soon as I do that, that is actually going to show up on the technician's app, and it will show them the order of the jobs in which you've planned them. So he'll be able to see that now this job is at the top of the queue. I also can move jobs between queues. So perhaps this job of clothes here should actually go to Hal. I can, same drag handle, but instead of moving it within clothes queue, I'm going to move it over here to Hal. So I'm just going to click it and I'm going to drag it over. I could put it at the bottom, kind of notice the shadow behind the job that I have selected is going to indicate where it drops. So I could do that, or if I want to move it anywhere within his queue, I can do that. As soon as I let go, it's going to drop that into his queue there. You'll also notice at the very top of each technician's queue that we have a total number of tickets and a number of estimated hours. So within Service 360, you have the ability to add how many estimated hours each work order would be. And then as you queue those jobs for your technician, it's going to do a total of the estimated hours. The reason we decided to do that is notice, Claude and Hal, they both have 3 jobs, but that doesn't mean that they have the same amount of hours planned. So the estimated hours is going to give you a little bit of a clue as to just how much work you have planned for that specific technician. Now, just like we used the jobs list on the scheduler side to schedule work, we're going to do the same thing with the queue. So I'm going to open up this jobs list here. And again, it opens in a paneled mode. I can make that a little bit smaller so I can see my queue. And what I would do here is I have the same ability for filtering for my columns. So once I've selected my job, and maybe I want to use this search functionality to look for a specific work order. But again, I'm going to use that drag handle and I'm going to move this over to the appropriate queue. So notice there's that shadow again. I've decided this is the top job. And so I'm going to add that to that technician's queue there. And as things are scheduled and queued, there will be check marks that get added. So this is my scheduled column. So since I queued it, that wouldn't show up. But I'd be able to see when something has been queued or when something has been scheduled. I'm also able to, I'm going to go ahead and hide this so we can look at the queue again. I also can click on an individual work order that opens up this job overview panel. That's going to allow me to change the priority. I'm going to see some additional work order, customer, and equipment information. I'm able to see which technicians are associated to this job. And I also can add additional technicians. So perhaps you need a second tech on the job, maybe a helper tech. Perhaps you have somebody who's kind of new, who's learning, and you want him to be able to work on the same job as more of a senior tech. I can click on this check mark. It's going to show me all of the technicians who are already assigned, and I'd be able to assign an additional tech. That way, I don't have to go back to my jobs list and search for it and drag it over to the right queue. I can just add it from here. You're also, just like you could on the scheduled side, you can see all of the times that a job has been scheduled or queued. You can remove that if that is no longer applicable. The other thing, before we get into the app, one last thing that I want to mention about the queue is that we do have the concept of groups. So if we scroll over, so we're seeing all of our technicians here that we have. Now we're getting into the groups. So the groups kind of have a couple different uses. So some use the groups as a way to kind of build a placeholder. So if I want to, let's just say it's my install. That's always a good one that we look at is I have all of these work orders and my technicians are just going to pick one right after the other. So maybe I want to use that as a holding queue. I'll schedule all of my work to the group queue first, and then I can move it over to the technician. But the secondary use for the queue is that it does have an integration with the Service Logistics app. So when I am creating a group, I have the ability to assign technicians to that group. When I do that, in addition to the technician's singular queue that belongs to them, they also have access to any of their group queues. They can go to that group queue and they'd be able to pick work from that queue and they can claim it and start working on it. So an install is a nice example for that, since you don't necessarily assign specific work orders to specific techs, you could have all of your install techs working off of that queue, and they would just go to that queue in the app and they're going to pick the next one in line. So you have that ability with the groups. So we'll just take a quick peek into the setup there. You can have unlimited groups. So notice some of the groups here aren't assigned to technicians, so maybe I'm just using that as my holding queue. For any of the ones that are assigned, these technicians are going to see that in the app. The last piece here that applies to both the schedule and the queue is this text tab. So how we have it currently set is that each of your technicians can either be a queue technician or a schedule technician. So we have some dealerships where we do have a mixture. Some choose to strictly use the queue or strictly use the schedule, but you do have the ability to mix and match. So if some of your technicians fall more in line with a date, time, calendar-based approach, you could set them as a schedule tech. If some are more off of a prioritized list, then set them as a queue tech. So that's where you'd come and do that, and you can change them at any time. Maybe you try one mode and that's not working as well as you think the other mode would be, so you can switch them over. So that's a bit into our planning modes. Now, at this point, we've either scheduled or queued work for our technician, and now we want to go into the app. Now I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint. I have some screenshots from the app. I don't actually have the app. Just with the logistics of the webinar, it's a bit difficult to share the app screen. So I pulled some screenshots from the app, and we're going to talk about some of the abilities within the app itself. So let's go back here. So the first thing is being able to view your queue or your schedule. So as we talked about, you can configure your technician to be one or the other. So in this first screenshot here, I'm a queue technician, and you'll notice that I've got this queue tab at the bottom of my app, and I am able to view all of the jobs that are queued. It's going to show the ranking. If I've assigned a priority code, that will display. I also can see all of the equipment information and customer information. And then for the second technician here, if they're set up for the schedule, then I'm going to see, now this was taken a couple days ago on April 18th. I'm seeing all of my jobs that are scheduled, and notice the difference. Instead of the ranking, I'm seeing the time duration that was scheduled. So this was 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. I've got my 9 to 1. And I can see the same information that I'm viewing as far as priority and all of the equipment and customer information. But it has that integration with the planning mode. So however, if you're using, whiteboards today or Excel spreadsheets, it can get kind of confusing to know what's next. It's a lot of manual work. Your technicians have to come in. Maybe they have to have a conversation with the service department about what's next. This expedites that, because right in the palm of their hand, where they're going to do the rest of their job with clocking and notes and pictures, they're able to see what's planned for them. And as soon as you update on your side in the back office, the jobs, that's going to transfer over into the app, and they have an updated list of what they need to work on. So it really saves you a lot of time and questions from your technician, and they're able to do what they do best, which is working on the machines. So that's our first kind of highlight of the Service Logistics app. Now, second would be the various functions that they can do within the app. So we talked about how they are able to clock time within the app. So I'm going to venture to say that the vast majority on the call today are already familiar with time clock within Quantum. So that's the option that you use for your technicians to be able to clock into a work order. Service Logistics actually simplifies things for your technicians because they don't need to know time clock codes. Instead, they're just telling the system what they're doing. And we keep it really simple. You're either traveling, you've arrived on site, or you're working. Now we have a couple additional, maybe they need to reject it for some reason. Maybe they've fallen ill, or they can't complete the job at that time for some reason. They can select that they've rejected it, or perhaps the customer has rejected it for some reason. Those would be indicated, and the back office would get a notice if either of those two events happened. But in the vast majority of cases, the technician is going to go ahead and clock into that job. And what's nice about it is that when we install Service 360 with you, we go through and you decide which of the time clock codes are going to be mapped to the service logistics statuses. So one thing Service Logistics also does is if you're not currently tracking your travel time, maybe you don't even have a separate time clock code for that, the app allows you to easily start doing that. And then you can kind of get some insight into as how much time your technicians are spent traveling. Some have used the arrived status. They've actually tied that to like a diagnostics code. It also allows you to pull that out and see how much time is being spent with diagnostics. So there's some simplification on the technician side and for you, but it also gives you additional insight that maybe you haven't had before just with the way that time clock has been set up and you didn't want your technicians to have to clock into extra codes. Well, now they don't have to. So that's the first thing. And as we mentioned when we were looking at the scheduler and the queue, as they clock into something, that information instantly comes back. As long as they have an internet connection, that's going to come back into either the scheduler or the queue, and that gives you visibility into what they're doing. So you don't have to be wondering anymore what they're working on, what they're clocked into. That's going to display right there in the scheduler or the queue. As soon as they complete a punch, you'll also be able to see that in the scheduler. That's going to come back into the business system, right into time clock and onto the work order. So they're not jotting their time down. It also is going to save them time if you've got a time clock terminal set up in the shop and they're walking back and forth countless number of times per day to do that. They don't have to do that anymore. Right within the palm of their hand on their device, they've got what they need to clock in. Second thing that they can do here is their story or notes. We call it work performed within the app. So notice here, you click the add button, you've got your option to add notes. Now this does also work with the voice to text, which has become a really popular feature. It's sometimes hard to type on a phone or a tablet, and voice to text is just nice to be able to speak into it, and it'll record exactly what you're saying. But they can type if that's preferable for them. And then the nice part about that is as they're typing, so maybe, they're doing notes as they go along. Any notes that they add, those are going to be visible within Service 360. And so you can see those at any time. And then once they've actually completed the work order in the app, so they go through a review process, they complete the job, those are going to transfer back into Quantum as a note set, and we actually have an import button that's right on the work with notes screen, and I'm going to show you that here soon, that'll pull those notes in right there. So you can, in that work with notes screen, you pull them in, you'll edit them, and then you can add them to your work order. So if you're currently having to, read things that they're writing down and then figure out what it is that they're saying, maybe there's, a bunch of mistakes, you can't read their handwriting, this is going to eliminate all of that. No double entry needed. Let the technician enter his notes, and all you have to do is make quick edits, and onto the work order it goes. So it's really going to save you time with the note processing. Now, when they are doing their notes, they also have the ability to take pictures. So you can see here in the screenshot, a few photos were added. They can either add photos on the go. So when they click that add photo button, it's going to prompt them to either take a photo with their camera right then and there, or they can actually go to the camera roll on their device and select them from there as well. And then those are going to be stored within Service 360, and you can access them. If you need to download them, you can do that and submit them for warranty or whatever's needed. All right, so before we're not quite to Q&A yet, I want to take you back to Quantum. So we talked about, let's just pop back up here to the workflow and see where we're at in the workflow. So obviously the work order has been created. We've scheduled and assigned it to the technician. They've done the repair. They've completed it. Let's take a look at what we're going to see in the business system and how we can quickly access Service 360 right from the work order within Quantum. So I'm going to go back over here to my browser, and we're going to go back to my work order in Quantum. So once the technician has completed the job in the Service Logistics app, you are going to see this new note, that new technician notes exist. So that's your indicator that the technician has completed the job. So I'm going to go and click enter here to get to my details screen. Any time that has been done on the app is going to come across here, just like a labor line through time clock would show up. Same format, everything's identical there as it was done through time clock. But now I'm gonna, let's go to my notes. So I'm gonna pick my ZZ labor code. And again, I get a second note here that my technician notes, new technician notes exist. So let me go ahead and go out to my notes option. Now this is my work with notes screen, my full note screen. And the system wants me to know that new technician notes exist. And now you have this import technician notes button. So I'm gonna go ahead and click on that. And whatever your technician typed in, that's going to display here. So now all you have to do is make edits. Maybe you want to add a little something. Maybe there was a spelling mistake. It happens. But with the spell check on the device, he'd be able to correct those as well. But you can change whatever you want here. And then all you need to do, maybe you want to delete that extra line there. And then you just say return with changes. Get my mouse click there, and now it added it with the sales code that you had selected. So really simple process. I didn't have to go into note sets and retrieve those. That was actually, if you have used those time clock notes in the past, you might have seen that time clock notes button before. Now I can just import them and they go right onto the work order. I didn't have to type everything out. It really simplified the process there. Now let's say that my technician took a picture or two and I want to go view those. So right on the sold to screen, so if we go back there, we actually have a Service 360 button right here. And what that's going to do, so I'm going to click on Service 360. It's going to open that Service 360 work order detail page in a new tab. So I'm still have access to the work order here, but now I can view some of the details. So I see that same work performed that I just imported. I've got the equipment and customer info. I don't need to go back to remember what equipment it was. And then I get a clue here that an image was attached. So we've got, quite a few sections of detail here. Technician activity is going to be an interesting one because this is where you're going to be able to see all of the technicians that are assigned, what their current status is in the app. So if they're en route or they're in a working status, you'd be able to see that. You can see their work performed here as well. The photo or photos that they've taken will display. So I can click on that and now I can see the damaged hose there. I also would be able to assign additional technicians if I wanted to, just by clicking that plus sign. And now I have all of my technicians who I have set up for Service 360. And then I also have a separate images section, and you are also able to add additional images. So all the ones that the technicians took within the app are going to show, but I can also upload additional images as well. And then I can, if I actually come to my edit upload images, I would be able to download them all. So maybe my technician took quite a few. Rather than having to right click and save them one by one, I'd be able to download them in one fell swoop, and then I can upload them wherever I want. So I'll be able to access that Service 360 button at any time, and it's always going to take me out to this Service 360 view of the work order. Last thing here I'll show you, and I know we're getting short on time, so we're going to get to Q&A here, but any of the time on the work order is going to show, so that labor line that you saw on the work order displays here, and then if it was coming, it'll also display from time clock if it wasn't done through the app, but if it was done through the app, I'd also see a status there. So at this point, I've brought in I've brought in my notes. I've got my time. All I need to do now is make adjustments. I can do that through time clock. If it's time related, I can add notes, and then I'm going to go ahead and close and bill this work order as I normally would. So that brings us full circle to the end. I'm going to go ahead and pass it back to Laura, who's going to take us through the Q&A, and then we'll wrap up.
Awesome. Great presentation and demo, Aliese. We do have a couple of questions in the queue. Can you add text to one queue or job?
Yeah, so each technician would have their own queue, and the only way that they can really be added to separate queues is just through those group queues. So those they would have access to multiple queues at that time. You also can add multiple technicians to the same job. So you can drag over the same work order either on the schedule or the queue. You can you just drag it over again, and that way multiple technicians could work on a job. So hopefully that answered the question, but I mean, type again if not.
Perfect. What device does the tech need to have Service 360 or Service Logistics? A laptop, a tablet, a phone?
Okay, that's a great question, and I'm glad somebody asked that because I meant to discuss that. So we actually do have two different versions of the app. I showed you our Service Logistics Go version because for most quantum dealers, that seems to be the popular one. It's a bit has less features to it and is also available on more devices. So Service Logistics Go is available on iOS and Android phones and tablets. And then we also have a Service Logistics Plus. It has a few more additional features, so it allows technicians to add parts. They also can perform checklists and create work orders. That functionality seems to be a bit too much for a lot of the technicians based on talking to different dealerships. But please know that that is out there, and we'd be happy to give you a demo of that if you feel like that would be more in line with your technicians. And just like the schedule and the queue is mix and match, you also can mix and match the two different apps. So if you have a few techs that would be more apt for the Plus version with more features, some can go on that while others are on the Go version.
Perfect. The next question we have here, is there an area in Service 360 where the service managers can see their live profit margins, aka see their department's financial information?
There's not in Service 360, but that does sound something like more what we'd have in our analytics offering. So I would put in your post survey if you want more information about that. We have a lot of different reporting options available in analytics, and the data is live because it's coming directly from the business system and the clocking that's going on. So I'd say that's going to be the probably more in line with what you are looking for with the profit margins.
Perfect. Can you schedule a job on the queue?
No, so there is no, in the queue, there is no concept of date or time. So it's completely suspended. It just is a prioritized list. So if you need a certain date and time, that's what you'd use the schedule side for.
Perfect. If a job was marked complete by the tech but failed it again, can it be reopened?
So on our Service Logistics Plus app, the technician does have the ability to go back to his work completed jobs, and he can clock back into them and make adjustments. That's assuming that it has not been closed yet by the back office. In Service Logistics Go, that currently cannot be done, but we actually do have something on our roadmap that will allow the back office to reassign that job to the technician, and when they take that action, it will show back up on the app for the technician.
Awesome. Does both apps show parts that are ordered and if they have arrived?
Yes. So in Service Logistics Plus, the technician has the ability to add his own parts, and he can also see parts that the back office added. In Service Logistics Go, it would be just, he can't add parts, but he can see the parts that the back office added. And each of the work orders does have a little, you might have seen in the screenshot, and I can go back to it real quick. You'll notice this parts available tab. So it'll show, if it's waiting for parts or if the parts have arrived, you'll be able to see that flip from, waiting to available.
Perfect. We have quite a few questions in the queue. So as mentioned earlier, if we don't get to your question today, we will be following up afterwards to answer your questions individually. The next one we have here is, who do I email about this analytics package? That's a great question.
Yeah, so if you put that you have interest in that in the post webinar survey, we'll make sure that the right person reaches out to you. So you don't have to worry about emailing someone. We'll contact you. But anything that you have product-wise, if you have further questions, you can always email sales@discorp.com. I'll put that slide up here for the contact us. And that will get you to your account manager as well, and they'll be able to contact you.
Perfect. Well, we have time for a couple more questions. So what devices are required for Service Logistics Plus?
Oh, so for Service Logistics Plus, that is an iPad-only app. So you would be required to have an iPad
Cool.
for that particular app. Mm-hmm.
Does it work for the text on a laptop?
No, so Service Logistics is not a laptop app. The back office side, since it's a web app, that would work on any device that has a web browser, but the app itself is phones and tablets only.
Perfect. Can text download PDF files?
Not currently. They can't download PDF files. There might be a way. I'm trying to remember in Service Logistics Plus. It's been a while. I'm not the product. I'm the product owner for the back office side mainly. So if you want to ask that again in your post survey, I might need to do a little bit of research to see if Plus offers other attachment types than photos. I thought there was a plan for it at one point, so I need to double check if it's a plan or if it actually was reality. But if you don't mind putting that question in again after the webinar, we can reach back out to you.
Perfect. When a tech is set on a queue, are we still able to see if clocking is in the schedule?
So yes and no. So a technician can only be a schedule tech or a queue tech. So if they are a queue tech, the only clocking that you'll be able to see would be what he's currently clocked into. Now there is another spot within Altura or Service 360 where you can see all of the time for that technician. We have talked about the need to put previous clocking in for queue technicians, but that's just a plan at this point. We don't have that today.
Perfect. We have time for one more and then we'll wrap up. Does editing notes show in systems that they were changed?
It does, yes. So in Quantum, it's not going to show for the technician while he's working on the job. So as he makes adjustments before he completes the work order, he can make changes all he wants there, and those changes aren't going to show anywhere. But once he's decided that he's completed with the work, that's going to come into the business system. And if anybody on the back office side who's working on the work order makes changes, that gets recorded to our document ledger. So if you want to go out to point of sale reports, point of sale document ledger, that's the report that you'd want to print that's going to show not only changes to notes, but any line changes, adds, deletions, modifications. That would be where you'd want to look for those.
Awesome. Aliese, did you have any final comments?
Yeah, I just want to thank everybody again for joining. And I know that there's a lot that we went through, probably more that I could have shown. So if you have additional questions or interest, please reach out. And I hope that everybody can see the importance of that digital transformation. You know, as I mentioned at the outset, it really has become the industry standard. You know, as technology advances, you don't want to get left behind. And so we're happy to show you further how our tools can help you. And again, thank you for being a great audience.